I'm Alan Spears with Occupy Democrats, and in an interview that is going absolutely viral, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett lays down the law for both Democrats and Republicans alike. Now in today's video, I'm actually going to show you two different clips, but before we dive too deeply into that, a little bit of context and background as to what Crockett is referring to. Now, as you are all pretty much well aware at this point, the presidential debate and the fallout that ensued is looming large on pretty much everyone's mind. Trump was allowed to spend those 90 minutes pretty much lying non-stop and uninterrupted or fact-checked by the CNN moderators, and meanwhile Biden seemed to be suffering from some sort of cold or just real lack of energy and seemed confused and had a lot of different Democrats concerned. Now, ever since the debate, Biden has been on a pretty much non-stop tour of interviews and public appearances, and since the debate has seemed pretty energized and pretty with it. He just recently delivered a pretty rousing and energized speech for NATO. Additionally, just the other day, we learned from Biden and his doctors that he recently received a checkover, and these rumors of things like Parkinson's or a tremor or anything like that are false. They were put to rest. And that President Biden does seem to be doing just fine in terms of his physical health. Now, despite Biden's best efforts to try to rebound from the first debate and trying to rouse the Democrats behind him, that has not stopped many from speculating as to whether or not Biden will continue to be the Democratic nominee or if he will drop out. In fact, a small but growing number of Democrats in Congress have started openly calling for President Biden to step aside as the Democratic nominee. We also even saw earlier today that George Clooney decided to write an opinion piece requesting that Biden step down and aside as the Democratic nominee, which, okay, great. I don't really think we should be taking the opinions or thoughts of actors too seriously, at least no more than we would anyone else. Just because we have actors play politicians in movies and television shows does not mean that they have any more insight than the rest of us as to the duties and responsibilities and what's at stake with the presidency. Now, all of that is to say that tensions are high in the Democratic Party, and it is both concerning and a little confusing at times. It would seem that rather than presenting a united front behind President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, many of the Democrats are kind of starting to circle up and choose sides, and the party is starting to fracture on what to do with President Biden and the nominee. And I seriously cannot think of a worse election for this sort of crap to start happening. Seriously, Democrats, get your shit together. But perhaps as a slight bit of good news, it would seem that the frustrations that many of us are experiencing are shared by a number of different other congressional Democrats, and that actually brings us nicely into the video I want to show you today with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Now, in this first clip of two I'm going to be showing you today, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett absolutely lays down the law for her fellow Democrats. Democrats seem to be way too focused on infighting and squabbling among their ranks when they should be united and facing the real enemy, Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. And Crockett articulates this perfectly, so see for yourself what the Congresswoman had to say.
The problem is that we have colleagues that are scared of their own shadow. Number one, they are not thinking clearly, or they have their own specific motives in why they are not standing by the president. But if Republicans can stand by somebody with 34 felony convictions who incited an insurrection, and then Republicans said, you know what, don't believe your lying eyes, those were just patriots on a tour, then I'm sorry, we can look at what the president was going through, because he was not sitting in a criminal courthouse or chilling at Mar-a-Lago. Instead, he was tired because he had been out in the streets, on the road, taking his message directly to the people. And honestly, I don't think that any presidential campaign runs just on the person at the top of the ticket. You played a clip of the vice president. For everybody that says that they are so in love with the vice president, which I have some questions about some of these people, but nevertheless, she is on the ticket. So if that's who you want to vote for her. Because if anything happens, there is a natural succession plan in the fact that she is the vice president. So if you don't want to vote for Joe, vote for Kamala. She's on the ticket. But at the end of the day, we have to win. It's not Joe and Kamala that are the enemy. It's not them that are the threat. It's this Supreme Court that will become worse. It's also MAGA that has proven themselves to be ineffective and ignore the people.
I absolutely love this woman, and she is dead on. The Democrats need to get it together. They need to unite behind President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. We are just 4 months away from the general election. Now is not the time to start infighting and targeting each other, trying to second guess a president that has an incredible track record. Yes, he did not perform well at the debate. We can all recognize that. However, the debate has nothing to do with how a country is ran. We've seen in numerous polls, too, that our allies, they see Biden as the most likely and capable candidate. And sure, while the opinions of other countries' leaders shouldn't really mean that much to us, it's our country and we the people get to make that vote, it still is important to remember that we do have to work together. Trump and the rest of these Republicans have proved time and time again that they do not have this country or any other country, maybe excluding Russia's, best interest at heart. And that actually leads me into the second clip I want to show you today, where Crockett absolutely skewers these Republicans and the just utterly wretched legislation and policies they stand on. Take a look and see for yourself what Crockett had to say as she utterly destroys the Republicans and their wretched ways.
That we don't have a farm bill because the Republicans have decided they want to cut $30 billion from SNAP benefits when people only get $6 a day to eat from SNAP in the first place. You have a party that has sided with the Supreme Court that said it is okay to criminalize homelessness and it's okay for people to go hungry in the streets of America. If that's the America that you feel like is great, then you do have a candidate and you do have a party that will give you all of that hell. But I'm telling you right now that that is not what I consider to be greatness, and that's not living up to the promise of America the Beautiful. So you have an option. It may not be the perfect options that you were looking for, but I can guarantee you one is closer to knocking on the doors of heaven and the other is absolutely going straight to hell.
Beautifully said. And let me just add to that, if Donald Trump is reelected, this country will go straight to hell. I truly cannot understand sometimes how these Republicans have managed to get into power on the policies and beliefs that they hold, but this is where we're at. Republicans truly seem to utterly hate this country. They are only interested in getting as much money as they possibly can, and they are not afraid in the slightest of who they have to step on or destroy to get there. I mean, seriously, these Republicans, despite wearing the American flag on pretty much every piece of clothing they own, constantly take steps against the interest of this country. I am so utterly exhausted of Republicans somehow convincing people that it's patriotic to hate others that aren't like you, that it's patriotic to strip away the rights of women, how it's patriotic to enforce one religion on a melting pot of a civilization. I know I've said it before and I'll probably say it again, but our country is at a tipping point. This election will seriously be the most important election we might ever face. Frankly, it really shouldn't matter all that much who the Democratic nominee is. As long as they are not Donald Trump and the Republicans, it is going to be an infinitely better choice. Trump and his allies have already proven that they have plans to start immediately stripping away the rights of all of us, even more than they already have with Project 2025. Rather than uniting and facing Donald Trump and his allies, rather than calling out Trump for the atrocities that he has committed, check out the trending hashtags on Twitter or X today if you want some insight as to what I'm talking about. Rather than uniting against that, Democrats are starting to infight? Are you kidding me? Democrats, get it together. We need to unite. We need to stop fighting each other and start looking outward at the real enemies, the blatant fascist enemies that are standing at our doorsteps. I don't care whether it is Biden, Harris, or Taylor Swift, we must ensure that anyone other than Donald Trump is elected.